Before we start, listen closely. If you love real emotional stories that feel like secrets whispered straight into your ear, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. What I'm about to tell you starts like a normal family lunch and turns into a silent nightmare. Because while I was smiling at the table, laughing on cue, my phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. It said, "Don't react. They're recording you." And in that moment, I realized every bite I took, every word I said, might be used against me. We were already 10 minutes late when we pulled into my parents' driveway. The White House looked exactly the same as it had my entire childhood, but that day it felt smaller, tighter, like it was holding its breath. I remember smoothing my dress over my knees in the passenger seat and forcing myself to smile before opening the door. My husband, Mark, glanced at me with that look he perfected over the years, half charm, half warning. The look that said, "Behave." Inside, the house smelled like roasted chicken, garlic, and something sweet baking in the oven. Familiar, comforting. That smell used to mean safety to me. That day, it felt like a lie. My mother rushed over, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her smile wide but her eyes sharp. "There you are. We were starting to think you weren't coming." "We're here," I said brightly, leaning in for a hug. Her arms were stiff around me. The dining room was already full. My father sat at the head of the table, phone face down beside his plate. My sister Claire was across from him, scrolling on her own phone, barely looking up. Her husband, Ben, was pouring wine like he owned the place. And then there was Aunt Linda, sitting slightly apart, watching everyone the way she always did, quiet, observant, like she knew things before anyone else. I took my seat, folding my napkin carefully. My phone went into my lap, screen dark. I hadn't checked it since we parked. Lunch started normally enough. Small talk, compliments about the food, complaints about traffic. My dad asked Mark about work, and Mark launched into a story I'd heard at least 3 times before, exaggerating just enough to make himself sound impressive. Everyone laughed at the right moments. I smiled. I nodded. I played my part. But something felt off. My sister kept glancing at me, then quickly looking away. My mom kept adjusting her phone on the counter behind her, angling it slightly toward the table. I noticed it, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Families are weird. Phones are everywhere. It meant nothing. Then my phone vibrated. Just once, soft, quick. I glanced down instinctively, expecting a spam notification or maybe a message from work. What I saw made my chest tighten so fast it stole my breath. "Don't react. They're recording you." The message was from an unknown number. For half a second, I forgot where I was. My ears rang. The room felt too loud and too quiet at the same time. My first instinct was to look up, to scan the room, to let my face show the shock boiling inside me. But the message was clear. "Don't react." So I didn't. I lifted my eyes slowly and smiled at my mother just as she set a dish of potatoes on the table. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, a little too sweetly. "Perfect," I said. I even laughed. I hated how natural it sounded. Inside, my mind was racing. Recording me? Who? Why? My parents? My sister? Mark? My phone buzzed again, still hidden in my lap. "They've been planning this for weeks." "Just eat. Act normal." My fork trembled slightly as I picked it up. I prayed no one noticed. Weeks. That word echoed in my head. Whatever this was, it wasn't spontaneous. It was deliberate. I took a bite of chicken. It tasted like cardboard. As the conversation shifted, I forced myself to participate. I commented on Claire's haircut. I asked Ben about their new car. I laughed when my dad made a joke I'd heard 100 times. All the while, I was hyper-aware of everything around me. The angle of my mom's phone. The way my sister's phone was propped against a water glass, camera lens facing outward. The fact that Mark hadn't touched his phone at all, something he never did. My phone buzzed again. "I can't talk long." "Just know this. They want you to say something. Anything that makes you look bad." My throat went dry. What could they possibly want from me? Then, like on cue, my father cleared his throat. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "have you thought any more about what we discussed?" My heart pounded. "What discussion?" I asked lightly, though I already knew. "The loan," my mother chimed in, sitting down at last. "We've been very patient." There it was. 6 months. That's how long it had been. 6 months since Mark and I borrowed a huge sum from my parents. It was to cover his business losses, and it was supposed to be temporary. He'd promised them, he promised me he'd pay it back in 3 months. He hadn't, and now somehow I was the villain in this story. We're working on it, I said, choosing my words carefully. Mark's new contract should. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Mark cut in before I could finish my sentence. It's not as simple as that, he said, letting out a heavy, theatrical sigh. You know how unpredictable things have been lately. My mother just shook her head, her disappointment a physical weight in the room. We trusted you. Both of you. The way she emphasized the word both made my stomach twist into a knot. My sister Claire leaned forward, her expression a mask of fake concern. Mom's just saying it's been stressful. For everyone. Her eyes met mine, and for just a fraction of a second I saw something flicker there. Was it guilt? Or maybe fear? I swallowed hard. I understand. The whole room seemed to lean in, the silence so thick it felt like it was listening to my heartbeat. My dad folded his hands on the table. We just need clarity, a timeline. Some accountability. I nodded slowly, trying to project a sense of control I didn't feel. That's fair. My phone vibrated again. A text message. I glanced down discreetly. They're trying to push you. Waiting for you to snap. I took a deep breath. In, out. Then I forced a smile. I can email you a detailed plan, I offered, my voice surprisingly steady. No need to get into all the details over lunch. Mark shot me a sharp, unreadable look, but he stayed quiet. Aunt Linda cleared her throat softly. Maybe we should all just enjoy the meal, she suggested. This chicken will be cold soon. No one responded. The tension was suffocating. My mother glanced at her phone, which was propped up on the kitchen counter, and adjusted its angle slightly. That's when I saw it. The little red dot on the screen. They were recording. My pulse thundered in my ears, but my face remained a calm, placid mask. I reached for my glass of water, my hands steady through sheer force of will. Why would they record this? To shame me? To use it against me later? To build some kind of case that I was ungrateful or worse, unstable? Another buzz from my pocket. They plan to confront you at the end. The video is their proof. Proof of what? I wanted to scream the words, to flip the table over. Instead, I turned my smile toward my father. You're right, I said, my voice sweet. Let's not ruin lunch. The silence that followed was thick and deeply uncomfortable. The rest of the meal was a blur. My mom asked pointed, passive-aggressive questions about my job. Claire made little comments about responsibility. And Mark, my dear husband, stayed mostly quiet, which was somehow the most unnerving part of it all. Through it all, I kept smiling. At one point, Mark leaned in and whispered, You're being unusually calm. I met his eyes. I'm just hungry, he snorted, clearly unconvinced. Just before dessert, my phone buzzed one last time. I'm sorry. I tried to stop them. My chest tightened. I quickly typed back, keeping my phone hidden under the table. Who is this? The response came almost instantly. Someone who knows what it's like to be set up by family. I looked up, my eyes scanning the room, and they landed on Aunt Linda. She was looking right at me. And this time, she didn't look away. For the first time all day, I felt something other than fear. I felt clarity. The lunch ended with forced hugs and hollow goodbyes. My mother kissed my cheek and whispered, We'll talk soon. I smiled right back, for the camera I knew was still recording. I'm sure we will, I said. The second we got into the car, my smile collapsed. My hands started shaking so badly I had to sit on them to make them stop. Mark turned to me, his brow furrowed. What was that back there, that whole act? I stared straight ahead through the windshield. We need to talk. He frowned. About what? I turned to him, my voice quiet but firm. About why my family thinks I'm the problem, I said. And why they thought recording me was a good idea. His face went completely pale. And in that moment I knew. This story was far from over. By the time we arrived at my parents' house, I already felt exhausted. Not the physical kind, this was deeper. The kind of tired that settles in your chest when you know you re-walking into a room where you were never fully safe. The driveway was full of cars, which meant everyone was already there. No late arrivals to soften the entrance. No time to prepare? Mark parked the car and turned off the engine, but neither of us moved. Just, let's keep this smooth, he said, loosening his tie. No drama today. I looked at him, searching his face for reassurance. I didn't find any, just impatience. I always keep it smooth, I replied quietly. He didn't answer. He opened the door. The house looked the same as it always had. White siding. Blue shutters. a porch my dad repainted every summer whether it needed it or not. It was the house I grew up in, the place that once felt like protection. But lately, every visit felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone else knew the script but me. The moment we walked in, my mother's voice rang out. "There you are." She hugged me tightly but not warmly. Her arms wrapped around me like she was checking something, measuring something. Then she stepped back and smiled wide. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine," I replied automatically. The dining room was already buzzing. My father sat at the head of the table, posture straight, expression neutral. My sister Claire sat to his right, phone in hand, her fingers moving quickly before she placed its screen down beside her plate. Her husband Ben stood near the counter, opening a bottle of wine like he belonged there more than I did. And then there was Aunt Linda. She sat quietly near the end of the table, hands folded, observing. She always did that, watched more than she spoke. As a kid, I found her comforting. As an adult, I found her unsettling. Like she noticed things others pretended not to see. "Sit, sit," my mom said, gesturing to the chair between Mark and Claire. "Lunch is almost ready." I took my seat, smoothing my dress, placing my phone in my lap without thinking. It was instinct, some small part of me already alert. Plates were passed, glasses filled. The smell of roasted chicken filled the room, but my appetite vanished. Everyone talked at once. Ben complained about traffic. Claire laughed too loudly. My dad asked Mark about work, and Mark slipped easily into performance mode, confident, charming, controlled. I smiled. I nodded. I played my role. Something felt off. My mother kept walking back and forth between the kitchen and dining room, adjusting her phone on the counter every time she passed it. At first, I thought nothing of it, but then I noticed the angle. Always tilted toward the table. Toward me. My sister barely looked at me, yet somehow I felt watched. The air was thick with something I couldn't name. Then my phone vibrated. Once, short, quiet. I glanced down casually, expecting nothing important. What I saw made my stomach drop. "Don't react. They're recording you." An unknown number. My heart slammed against my ribs. For a split second, I felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt. I wanted to look up, to scan every face, to demand answers. But the message was clear. Don't react. So I didn't. I lifted my gaze slowly and smiled at my mother as she set the potatoes on the table. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes sharp. "Great," I said. I even laughed. Inside, my thoughts were a tornado. Recording me? Why? Since when? Who was they? My phone buzzed again. They want a reaction. Just act normal. Normal, I focused on that word like a lifeline. I took a bite of chicken, chewed, swallowed. It tasted like nothing but ash in my mouth. I studied the room carefully now, not as a daughter, but as a detective. My sister Claire's phone was no longer flat, it leaned slightly against her glass. My mom's phone sat propped up near the fruit bowl, its screen glowing faintly. And my husband, Mark? Mark hadn't touched his phone once. He was avoiding it. That alone terrified me more than anything. Another buzz. "They've been planning this. You're not crazy." Planning. My chest tightened. I hadn't just walked into a family lunch. I had walked into an ambush. Something deliberate. Something prepared. My dad cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "So," he said, his voice trying to sound casual, "have you two made any progress?" I felt it coming before the words landed. "On what?" I asked gently, keeping my voice even. "The money," my mother said, sitting down at last. And there it was. The real reason for this gathering. 6 months earlier, Mark's business had nearly collapsed. I had convinced my parents to loan us the money, promising it would be temporary, promising we'd handle it together. But somehow, over time, the story changed. It had twisted. And somehow, in this new version, it became my responsibility alone. "We're working on it," I said carefully. "Things are stabilizing." My phone buzzed under the table. "Careful." "They're pushing." Mark let out a loud, theatrical sigh. "It's complicated." "You know how the market's been." My mother just shook her head slowly. "We trusted you." Her tone implied both of us, but her eyes stayed fixed on me. Claire leaned forward, her face a mask of concern. "It's just stressful watching this drag on." I nodded. "I understand. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't cry." And I could feel their disappointment. It was almost palpable. The questions kept coming, subtle, sharp, strategic. About my job, my spending. My choices, each one felt like a carefully placed piece of bait. My phone buzzed again. They want you emotional. The video is insurance. Insurance. For what? At one point, my mother adjusted her phone again, and this time I saw it clearly. A small red dot on the screen, recording. My hands trembled under the table. I clenched my fingers together until the shaking stopped. Let's not do this at lunch, I said softly. We can talk later. Silence followed. Heavy. Charged. Aunt Linda, who had been quiet the whole time, spoke up gently. The food's getting cold. No one acknowledged her. Mark leaned toward me and whispered, his voice laced with frustration. Why are you so calm? I smiled without looking at him. Because I'm done being blamed. He stiffened beside me. Dessert came and went. Forced smiles, tense laughter. Final remarks disguised as concern. Then my phone buzzed one last time. I tried to stop them. I'm sorry, my thumbs flew across the screen. Who is this? The reply came almost instantly. Someone who learned too late what your family is capable of. I looked up. Across the table, Aunt Linda met my eyes. And for the first time all day, she didn't look away. The drive home was silent until Mark finally broke it. What happened back there? I stared out the window at the passing streetlights. I was warned. Warned about what? I turned to him, my voice cold. About being recorded. About being set up. His face drained of color, and that's when I knew. This wasn't just my family's plan, this was bigger. And it was just beginning. The car felt too small for the silence that filled it. Mark's hands were tight on the steering wheel, his knuckles pale, his jaw locked. I knew that look. It meant he was thinking fast, not feeling. I just watched the houses pass by, each one so neat and ordinary, and I wondered how many secrets were hiding behind their doors. Who warned you? He asked finally. His voice was casual, but it didn't match his posture. I don't know, I said. Not completely. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to. It happened. He exhaled sharply. You're saying my parents recorded you? I'm saying they were trying to, and you just smiled through it? Yes. He glanced at me then, really looked at me. For the first time that day, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. When we got home, I didn't even take my shoes off. I went straight to the kitchen and poured a glass of water, my hands finally shaking now that no one was watching. Mark leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes never leaving me. You think this was some kind of trap, he said. I know it was. He laughed, a short, hollow sound. Why would they do that? I met his eyes. You tell me. That was the moment something shifted between us. A line I hadn't known we were standing on suddenly cracked open. He looked away first. I went to the bedroom and locked the door. My phone felt heavier than it ever had. I scrolled back through the messages slowly, reading every word, every pause. Don't react. They're recording you. They've been planning this. They want you emotional. I tried to stop them. With trembling thumbs, I typed a message. Why warn me? The reply came a minute later. Because once they did it to me. My breath caught. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart pounding. Did what? Another pause, longer this time. They pushed me until I broke. Recorded it. Used it to control the story. I didn't need clarification. I knew exactly who this was. Aunt Linda. I remembered her sudden silence years ago, the way she stopped coming to holidays, the hushed conversations that ended whenever I entered a room. I always thought it was just family drama. I was wrong. What do they want from me? I typed. Leverage. The reply came. And obedience. I swallowed hard. That night, Mark barely spoke to me. He claimed he was tired and went to bed early, his back turned. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from lunch. Every glance, every word chosen to corner me. By morning, my fear had hardened to something else, resolve. I called in sick to work and drove back to my parents' house. Alone, not to confront them. Not yet. I needed proof. My mom answered the door with a surprised smile. You forgot something? Yes, I said, smiling back. My charger. I think I left it in the dining room. She hesitated, just a fraction too long. Of course, come in. The house was quiet, too quiet. As she turned toward the kitchen, I slipped my phone into my pocket and let my eyes wander. The counter where her phone had been was empty now, clean, innocent. I'll grab it, she said quickly. You sit. No need, I replied, already moving toward the dining room. My heart raced. I opened drawers casually, pretending to search. Then I saw it. Her phone tucked beside a stack of napkins, screen dark. I didn't think. I picked it up and unlocked it. She hadn't changed the passcode. She never did. My hand shook as I opened her gallery. And there it was. I tapped on the video file dated just yesterday. The screen filled with the image of our dining table. My own voice drifted through the speakers, calm, polite, measured. My mother's voice sounded softer than it ever had in real life, a strange feigned gentleness. My sister Claire's was sharp and pointed, just as I remembered. But watching it back, I could see something I missed in the moment, a thick, suffocating tension. I could see the trap they were setting, then came the end. The moment they'd been waiting for, the push that never quite worked. "Why won't you just admit you were irresponsible?" Claire's voice demanded. And then my own voice replied, steady, almost gentle. "Because I wasn't." The video stopped. I looked up. My mother was standing in the doorway. "How could you?" she asked, her voice shaking. But it wasn't with guilt. It was with rage. I turned to face her, the phone still clutched in my hand. "Why did you record me?" Her lips pressed into a thin, hard line. "We needed evidence." "Evidence of what?" I asked, a hollow feeling starting in my stomach. "Of how you twist things," she snapped, her mask of composure falling away. "Of how you manipulate situations to make yourself look innocent." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out broken and sharp, more like a sob. "You recorded me," I said, the absurdity hitting me full force. "And the only thing you proved is that I stayed calm while you tried to provoke me." Her eyes flicked to the phone in my hand, a flicker of panic in them. "Delete it." "No." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, threatening tone. "You don't understand what you're doing." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, my own voice surprisingly firm. "You wanted to provoke me. You wanted to catch me snapping. You wanted to show Mark, or whoever else would listen, that I'm the unstable one, that I'm the problem." She didn't deny it, and her silence told me everything I needed to know. I turned and walked out of that house without another word. When I got home, my husband, Mark, was waiting. He saw the look on my face and knew immediately. "You went back," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And what did you find?" he asked, his tone cautious. I just held up the phone, the video still paused on the screen. His face hardened. "Give that to me." "No," I said, pulling it back. "We need to handle this carefully," he insisted. "Why?" I asked, a cold dread creeping up my spine. "So you can help them? So you can protect them?" He flinched. The look on his face was enough. "Were you part of this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer right away. And that silence was louder than any confession could ever be. Finally he spoke, avoiding my eyes. "I just thought, if they saw how you get sometimes..." My heart didn't just break, it shattered. "You mean when I defend myself?" I whispered, the room spinning around me. He looked away, and in that moment everything clicked into place. The calm he always demanded of me. The blame that somehow always landed at my feet. The way I was always expected to absorb the damage, to be the family shock absorber, quietly taking every hit so that everyone else could stay comfortable. "I'm done," I said, the words feeling solid and real in my mouth. "With what?" He asked, confused. "With being recorded, with being controlled, with being sacrificed so everyone else's lives can be easier." I packed a bag that night. As I was about to leave, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from my Aunt Linda. "Proud of you," she wrote. "Be careful. They won't let go easily." I drove away before dawn with no destination in mind, only knowing that I couldn't stay there another second. And as the sun started to rise, casting long shadows on the road ahead, I realized something that was both terrifying and incredibly freeing. They had tried to trap me with that video, but instead they had only exposed themselves. Sometimes the hardest step is the first one. The sky was just starting to lighten when I pulled off the highway and parked at a quiet rest stop. My hands were numb on the steering wheel, my body running on pure adrenaline. I cut the engine and just sat there in the heavy silence, listening to my own breathing. I was trying to wrap my head around how my life had just completely split in two. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Not Mark, not my parents, not even Aunt Linda. I just needed one place where nobody was watching me. Nobody was recording me, nobody was waiting for me to say the wrong thing. I managed to sleep in the car for maybe an hour before my phone started buzzing relentlessly. Missed calls, texts, voicemails stacking up like threats disguised as concern. My mother's messages were the first to come through. We need to talk. Then, you're being dramatic. And finally, you're hurting this family. My sister Claire's message was next. You really embarrassed us. And then Mark's text. They were short, controlled. Come home. We can fix this. Stop making it worse. I flipped the phone face down on the passenger seat. By mid-morning, I was at Aunt Linda's house. She opened the door before I even knocked, almost like she was expecting me. The moment she saw my face, she pulled me into a hug so tight I finally let myself cry, and I didn't cry quietly or politely. I cried the way you do when your body finally realizes it's safe enough to fall apart completely. I didn't imagine it, did I? I managed to say between sobs. No, she replied softly, holding me. You didn't. She made tea, and we sat at her small kitchen table with sunlight streaming through the window. For the first time in what felt like forever, no one was filming me. No one was testing me. They did the same thing to me, she said after a long silence. Years ago, I listened as she told me everything. How my parents had disapproved of her life choices. How they had pushed and pushed, needling her in private and in public, until one night she finally snapped. She raised her voice, said things she regretted. They recorded it, she told me, just like they did with you. They played it for the whole family. Used it to paint me as unstable, as difficult. My chest tightened. Why didn't anyone stop them, I asked. They believed them, she said simply. Or they just didn't want to be the next one on their list. That night, just as I knew he would, Mark showed up. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, his face a carefully blank mask. Aunt Linda answered the door but didn't invite him in. She just stepped aside and let me decide what to do. I stepped outside onto the porch. You left, he said. Yes, you took something that doesn't belong to you. I took proof, I replied. He let out a sigh. You don't understand what this is doing to everyone. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. I understand exactly what it's doing. You were willing to let them destroy my credibility just so you could protect yourself. That's not fair, he said. It's accurate. His voice dropped. They said if you looked unstable, they'd be more patient with me about the money. And there it was. I just nodded slowly. So you traded my reputation for a little more time. He didn't even try to deny it. I loved you, I said, the words feeling hollow. But you loved being comfortable more. The silence between us was deafening. I'll send the video to myself, I finally said. Then I'll delete it from your mother's phone. That's the last favor I'll ever do for any of you. He swallowed hard. If you share it, I won't. I cut him off. I don't need to. Knowing I could is enough. He left without another word. The fallout was quiet, but it was brutal. My parents stopped calling after I refused to apologize. My sister blocked me on all social media. The extended family took sides without even asking what happened. The narrative was the same one I'd heard my whole life. I was overreacting. I was tearing the family apart. But for the first time in my life, I didn't try to correct them. Weeks turned into months. I found a small apartment near my work. I started sleeping better than I had in years. I laughed more easily. That constant knot of tension in my chest finally began to loosen. It was a Tuesday evening, just like any other, when my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. 5 words that felt heavier than 1,000. Can we start over? I just stared at the screen, the cursor blinking, waiting. For a moment, I pictured everything that led to this point, the constant criticism, the manipulation, the feeling of always being on trial. The day the divorce was finalized, my Aunt Linda took me to lunch. She'd been my rock through all of this, the one person who saw the truth. We found a small table by a window, watching the world move on outside, people laughing, cars passing, everything so beautifully normal. It was a stark contrast to the chaos I had been living in. I sipped my water, feeling a quiet sense of peace settle over me for the first time in years. Aunt Linda looked at me, her eyes kind but knowing. You know, she said softly, they thought controlling the narrative would control you. She was talking about my mother, Mark, the whole family system that had tried to paint me as the problem, the phone calls they recorded, the stories they spun. For years, I had walked on eggshells, terrified of saying the wrong thing, of giving them more ammunition. I took a slow breath and looked out the window again. They were wrong, I replied. A small smile touched her lips. Exactly. And you know what really scared them? You stayed calm. You didn't give them the fight they were baiting you for. Your silence, your composure, that was your power. It drove them crazy because they couldn't control it. Her words hit me. I thought back to all those moments I chose not to engage. The heated texts I left unanswered. The dramatic voicemails I deleted without listening. I thought back to that final message from my mother. The old me would have replied with a novel of pain and anger. The old me would have called, ready for a fight, desperate to be heard and understood. But the new me, the one who was slowly learning her own worth, understood that some battles aren't meant to be fought. They're meant to be walked away from. Choosing not to react, not to get pulled back into their storm. It wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate act of self-preservation. It saved me. Now my life is different. The buzzing of my phone doesn't make my heart leap into my throat. I don't flinch, wondering if it's another attack, another demand. I don't constantly look over my shoulder, wondering who might be watching or listening. I don't measure my words like they're weapons, carefully calculating every syllable. I just speak. I live, I breathe freely, without the weight of their judgment.